Have you ever found yourself wondering what really happens when, high-stakes political accusations crash head-on with federal investigations? It's almost like watching a legal drama unfold, but the entire political arena is the backdrop. Today, we're taking a closer look at a situation that's, well, truly capturing headlines. We're diving deep into a report from ABC News. It's about this intense pressure federal prosecutors are apparently facing. Pressure to bring mortgage fraud charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James. And look, this isn't just some dry legal brief. It feels like a swirling vortex of legal scrutiny, political maneuvering, and there's a whole lot of history involved, too. Our mission in this deep dive is really to give you, our listener, a clear, concise understanding of what's going on. We'll unpack the specific accusations, give you the lowdown on the investigation's current status, introduce you to the key players who are making waves, and crucially, we want to illuminate the broader political context. Because that's what makes this story so undeniably compelling, right? Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed, maybe with some surprising insights along the way.
And we're building our understanding today mainly on that significant report from ABC News. It was meticulously put together by correspondents Peter Charalambous, Kathleen Faulders, and Alexander Mellon. This source is absolutely critical because, well, it provides a direct window into this developing story. It offers specifics, quotes, statements that are really central to understanding not just what is happening, but also why it matters. How the legal process and these political undercurrents are really intertwining in real time.
Okay, right. So let's peel back the layers on the central accusation here. At its core, New York Attorney General Letitia James stands accused of something very specific. It's allegedly falsely claiming her Virginia home as her primary residence back in 2023. Now, this isn't just a minor technicality on some form. It potentially carries significant weight. The critical context here is New York state law itself. That law explicitly mandates that the Attorney General must reside within New York while serving in office. It's a requirement. So this allegation, that her primary residence was actually in Virginia, well, it strikes directly at a fundamental requirement for her holding that position. It's not just about owning property somewhere else. It's specifically about official residency.
Exactly. And building on that, the legal nuances around what actually constitutes a primary residence, they're incredibly tricky, often far from black and white.
Yeah.
For public officials, these state residency requirements are usually quite strict. And it's not just about, where you happen to sleep most nights. It's a whole constellation of factors they look at. Things like where you're registered to vote, where you file state taxes, where your driver's license is issued, even utility bills, maybe where your kids go to school, if that applies. Intent is absolutely central, but proving intent, especially proving a false intent, can be a huge hurdle legally. It makes the burden of proof really quite high if you're trying to prove someone made a false claim. There are just so many pieces to that puzzle. It really highlights how something that seems, on the surface, pretty straightforward can actually become incredibly complex in a legal setting.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because this isn't just some anonymous complaint floating around out there. We're talking about very specific, influential individuals who are actively pushing for these charges. The ABC News report names Ed Martin, who heads the Department of Justice's Weaponization Working Group, and Bill Pulte, who is the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. These aren't just private citizens. They hold positions that carry significant weight within federal circles. And their actions are notably direct. The report says they've actively urged the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, urged them to formally file criminal charges against Attorney General James. That's a direct, high-level request from within the federal government, essentially, to initiate a criminal prosecution. It feels like quite an extraordinary move.
Yeah, the involvement of these particular individuals isn't just about their titles, though that's part of it. It's also about the implied weight they carry and, frankly, the strategic optics of it all. You have Martin heading a DOJ group that's explicitly focused on investigating the weaponization of justice. His involvement kind of creates this narrative suggesting an internal validation for the idea that maybe James misused her office. And then Pulte's position at a federal housing agency, well, that lends a veneer of technical authority to the mortgage fraud aspect of the accusation. So their advocacy becomes particularly potent, I think, in shaping public perceptions and putting pressure on those federal prosecutors. Ideally, federal investigations are meant to be shielded from external political influence. So this kind of public direct urging, it really does raise some important questions about boundaries and maybe the integrity of the legal process itself.
Right. So with all this pressure being applied, what's the actual status of the investigation itself? Where does it stand? According to that ABC News report, a 5-month preliminary inquiry has, so far, uncovered, and this is the quote, no clear evidence that James committed mortgage fraud. That sounds, on the face of it, like a pretty definitive initial finding. However, and this is important, this is the end of the story, it's crucial to know that the FBI did open a criminal investigation into James back in May. So you clearly have multiple layers here. There was a preliminary look, and now there's a deeper, ongoing probe.
And this raises a really important distinction, maybe what seems like a contradiction at first glance. The difference between finding no clear evidence after an initial look and having an ongoing FBI criminal investigation. Think of it maybe like this. No clear evidence after an initial inquiry is like, opening the fridge and not immediately seeing the snack you want. It suggests that a quick scan didn't reveal any obvious smoking guns, right? But the FBI opening a criminal investigation, well, that means someone's now actually digging through the shelves. They're moving things around, just in case that snack is hiding behind something else. It implies that there was some credible information, something that warranted a much deeper, more intensive search, even if that clear evidence hasn't been publicly identified or confirmed yet. So while the initial look didn't yield immediate answers, the FBI's continued involvement signals that, yes, the allegations are definitely still being explored. The legal process is very much alive.
Okay, that makes sense. Now let's step back a bit and connect the dots to the broader political landscape. Because this current situation, it isn't happening in a vacuum, is it? I think most of us will recall Attorney General James's extremely high-profile civil fraud case against former President Donald Trump. That case initially resulted in that staggering $354 million penalty in 2024, which, with interest, climbed even higher to about $515 million. Now, while a New York appeals court did later deem that penalty excessive and threw it out, the impact in the headlines were just immense at the time. And as you might expect, former President Trump has had some very strong, very public reactions to James's actions over time. He's frequently used his Truth Social platform, public remarks, to attack her, calling her wacky, totally corrupt. There's really no ambiguity about his displeasure with her.
No, not at all. And it's truly fascinating how these historical tensions really set the entire stage for what's happening now. You mentioned the U.S. Attorney Johnny Sarcone III. He actually made a very pointed statement. He directly contrasted his office's approach with what he labeled James's unethical focus on Trump during her 2018 campaign for Attorney General. Now, this isn't just a casual observation he's making. It's a direct comparison. It essentially draws a line, doesn't it, from James's past actions against Trump to the present situation involving her. It powerfully illustrates how this sense of partisan score settling can cast a really long shadow, how it can potentially weaponize even technical legal accusations, turning them into extensions of ongoing political battles. It definitely creates a narrative of grievance and perceived injustice that absolutely influences how future interactions, like these current accusations, are viewed.
Yeah, absolutely. And given this highly charged atmosphere, it's perhaps not surprising that Attorney Abbe Lowell, who represents Attorney General James, has come out swinging. He told ABC News that this entire push for charges, well, he believes it isn't just about James. He framed it as part of a much broader mortgage fraud crusade against Democrats. He sees a clear, coordinated political pattern here.
Yeah.
And Lowell is just making a general claim. He actually provided specific examples to back up that assertion. He points to similar allegations that former President Trump has raised against other prominent Democratic figures, including Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook and Representative Adam Schiff from California. So this suggests a pattern that extends far beyond just Attorney General James, implying maybe a targeted political strategy. Lowell's defense is pretty unequivocal on James's behalf. He stated, quote, "Any impartial and non-political inquiry would conclude Attorney General James did not violate any laws managing her properties," unquote. That's a very strong assertion. It directly frames the current pressure as politically motivated, not legally justified.
Right. And what this framing, this idea of a mortgage fraud crusade against Democrats really does is it encourages critical thinking about the motivations driving these legal pushes, When you see similar kinds of allegations surfacing against multiple individuals, all affiliated with a specific political party, and especially when these accusations originate from figures associated with an opposing political camp, well, it compels us as observers to look beyond the surface level of the legal claim itself. It becomes crucial for us as informed observers to consider, okay, is the primary goal here pure justice? Or is it perhaps political leverage? Now, that doesn't automatically mean the claims are baseless, of course not. But it certainly raises that question of strategic intent and requires us to evaluate the evidence, whatever emerges, with an extra layer of scrutiny.
That's a really good point. And finally, it's also telling, I think, to observe the distinct lack of official commentary from several key institutions on this whole thing. The White House, the Department of Justice itself, and the Federal Housing Finance Agency. The agency run by one of the people pushing for charges, remember, all of them declined to comment to ABC News regarding this pressure campaign and the ongoing investigation. It's a silence that kind of speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It does. And in politically sensitive investigations like this one, no comment statements from official bodies are, well, they're usually pretty standard practice. Often the stated goal is to avoid prejudicing an ongoing investigation or to prevent speculation or simply to maintain a public stance of neutrality. However, in a climate as charged as this one, a strategic no comment can also sometimes be interpreted in various ways by the public. Paradoxically, it can sometimes fuel further speculation rather than actually quelling it. It definitely underscores just how sensitive the situation is perceived to be, and how keen these institutions likely are to remain outside the political fray, at least publicly, even as others might be trying to draw them into it.
Okay, so to bring it all back home for you, our listener, let's recap the essential takeaways from this deep dive. We've explored this unusual, very public pressure campaign by figures linked to the former Trump administration. Pressure to levy mortgage fraud charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James. We've seen that while an initial 5-month inquiry apparently yielded no clear evidence of mortgage fraud, the FBI has still launched its own separate criminal investigation, which is presumably ongoing. And perhaps most critically, we've dissected the undeniable political backdrop here, a backdrop directly stemming from James's previous high-profile and very contentious legal battles against former President Trump.
And it's absolutely paramount, I think, that we evaluate all this incoming information based on the facts presented in reliable sources like the ABC report we discussed. We need to ensure we maintain an impartial lens while exploring these really complex interconnections. Because in a landscape where legal actions and political narratives intertwine so often and so intensely, the ability to discern the factual basis from the surrounding rhetoric is just essential for getting a truly complete understanding.
Right, so we're kind of left with a compelling question to think about, aren't we? What does all this mean for the perceived integrity of our legal processes when such high-profile political figures get involved? And what are the long-term challenges in maintaining public trust when serious accusations fly amidst such intense partisan rhetoric? We encourage you to reflect on how developments like these shape our understanding of justice, political accountability, and maybe that delicate, often difficult balance between the two. It's a profound question, really. It goes to the very heart of our institutions and our faith in their fairness.